Still good. Probably just a big summer, trying to get back healthy and then pretty much just look forward to next season.
Do you think about the games you did play were obviously very, very good? What do you think about kind of the strides you made from last season to this season, kind of a basketball standpoint?
Uh, it was pretty much just fun out there playing basketball. Like I said, pretty much just focused on getting healthy.
We saw you in the booth. What did they told you about kind of your timetable about you get out of the booth when you start wrapping everything up? Cliff said you should be good by preseason, but what's kind of the summer looking like for you?
Yeah, pretty much that, and just listening to the trainers and then go from there.
What do you think having the number one overall pick would mean to this organization and what you could possibly do going forward if you guys get some lottery luck here in 38 days?
Definitely a lot. I mean, I feel like we all know what's going on, so the first pick definitely could help a lot.
You watch any of those guys?
Yeah, I seen a few for real, and then even with the little March Madness, watched a couple games. So you've seen a couple people. Uh, like the first five, like pretty much like every draft.
Clifford mentioned is how upset you get with losing, how much you don't like losing, how much it bothers you.
Right.
3 years now, obviously, you guys have got the playoffs. Just what's it been like to not get to that point, and how do you fix that next year?
Pretty much just take it as learning lessons. Can't really get too down on yourself. So go into next season and just, make playoffs.
Talked about that at all?
Yeah, they've been talking about it since I've been here, since definitely a lot since Cliff got here. So yeah, just more and more.
What you guys do, need that experience kind of. I mean, obviously, playoffs is what you want to do, is what you play for.
Right.
To get that experience for someone like yourself who's still young, how important for you to be able to get that experience next year or beyond?
I'm pretty much just focused on making it. I mean, experience is just being there pretty much.
A lot of guys drafted in your spot are judged historically based on making the franchise better than when they got there. Is that something you think about, like wanting to leave your imprint here in Charlotte?
Yeah, pretty much.
Melo, you addressed this a little bit earlier, but how much do you want to be in Charlotte long term? Do you feel like this is the place for you, your NBA career?
Play about a day. I mean, like I said, I love it out here. So I can't really tell the future. Just see how it goes and go from there.
Follow up on that. Cliff earlier was asked about it and said, it's critical that you start winning, to kind of keep you around.
You're right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, definitely. I mean, main thing is winning. But life is better when you win. So yeah, pretty much the main thing is definitely winning.
Man, I was just grateful for the opportunity that Cliff really trusted me with those games. Just to go out there and be my best, and trusted me to provide something for the team. But I think that next year we could really improve upon, like, just overall as a team aspect. Just getting better every single game and just trying to win more games.
Cliff said, whether you were or not, like going into the season, that he was one of the guys that stood out in the summer, it was the summer, and sort of strides you were making. How good did it feel to see all your hard work last summer? And what was really kind of the first normal offseason that you had into the play that you have this year?
That was a good feeling. It's the fact that Cliff actually believed in me. He hasn't even seen me play. He's seen me play maybe twice in the summer league, and he believed that I could bring real value to the team. Cliff's he's been a really good coach for all of us. He's helped me get better in all aspects of my game. Making me watch film with him. Making me become a student of the game, and just giving me more knowledge on the game.
You probably not playing simultaneously on the court at the same time, but in practice, what was the way working with Mark this year, and how did you guys push each other to get better as the season progressed? It seemed to be, at least the strides as a team defensively, but also big roles, big improvements in that area.
I mean, we both have the same position coach. Rex, he talks about what we need as from our bigs, more of a defensive presence. And I think, we established that that we're both really good shot blockers in the paint, and we're both really good in coverages. On pick and roll. Guarding multiple positions on the floor. But I think that this summer we are definitely going to get better at it. We're going to try to show what improvements we're going to make during next season. It's going to be a fun time for us.
How much of that is not only the physical stuff you have on the court, but the mental side of the game this summer, kind of get that study?
Well, Cliff is really big on film. I think he watches too much film sometimes. But just the way his detail into the game, it makes the game easier for all of us when when he gives us the game plan. And it makes us, feel like, there's a coach that, wants us to succeed and wants every single one of the guys to, be better at their position.
Yeah. I think for me, for sure, it's been mentally taxing more than anything. The only thing I could really do is just be consistent, show up, making sure I'm doing my rehab. And the staff did a really good job of making sure I was on top of that. My teammates made sure that I was straight and just making sure I was good mentally. But I've never sat out an extended period of time like this before. So, you can imagine how frustrating that might be, especially when the season is going how it is and, all you really want to do is help and get back out there and play. But, that was my main focus, is making sure that, my knee was getting where it needs to be.
I'm not sure you're able to kind of tell us, but just overall how you're feeling right now. And
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel better and I feel optimistic going into the summer, considering that I do have some time to make sure that this is a priority, and that's really my main focus right now, is just making sure I feel good going into the summer and taking advantage of the time I do have.
You kind of, they talk about your situation, and it was being kind of up in the air. What have they told you about, like, the timetable of what your ramp up's going to look like, and how long, if anything, it might be until you resume kind of full basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm too focused on a timetable right now. That's tough because everybody reacts different to certain things. So I think for me, it's just about how it feels. I think about the confidence going into the summer that I'm going to have and I'm going to build on to make sure I have the time to focus solely on getting it where it needs to be. And like I said before, I'm pretty optimistic going forward. And so I would say I'm less focused on timetables and more or less about how it feels.
With that moment, like on that first night, when you had that setback, was that just kind of like it hasn't felt good basically since then? Like, how did it feel like it leading up to the season?
What do you mean, like in San Antonio?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I knew that it didn't feel great, but that's just who I am. I played through injuries before, so I never thought it was, to this degree. But, when it happened, it was about making sure that I felt good the next time I came back. And, you know, it felt like it was getting there to a point, then it didn't. So it was just more or less just, all right, let me make sure that I feel good the next time I'm able to play and get on the court, because when you're out there and you are playing not at 100%, you are playing hurt, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping your team. So like I said, I'm just focused on that right now.
You said on top table, so just how do you feel right now physically?
Yeah.
Having future wise,
Yeah.
surgery didn't have anything up in there, you think or anything else?
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel good right now. I feel good going into the summer. Is it 100%? No. But all I can really do is make sure that I'm putting myself in a position, because, rehab wise, consistency wise, and just, so I can build on that and build on the work I've already done throughout the season. I don't think that I would have to do anything procedure wise or anything like that. So, I'm not even thinking about that right now. I'm just more or less focused on the situation at hand and just building off that.
Can you put into words what it's been like? You mentioned not seeing out this long in your entire career.
Yeah.
Put into words what it's been like to not be able to help teammates another tough season for you guys.
Yeah.
And people are questioning why you're not playing up there now, so you want to just work this one like you.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about before, it's frustrating. That's the best way you can put it. And it's just how frustrating that is, sitting out that long, seeing how the season's going, wanting to play, wanting to contribute. I'm putting the pressure on myself to come back and play because that's who I am. I've never sat out this long. I want to play. I want to contribute. I want to help. So, so it's the first time I really had to put myself and what I have going on right now first. And in reality, nobody's really going to understand because nobody knows my body better than I do. So the only people that, is going to understand that to a degree is me, the training staff, and, just like I said before, just kind of working to make sure that I feel good when I do come back. And that's what I'm going to keep doing.
You mentioned training staff. I mean, just how vital have they been for you throughout this process?
Yeah.
Because it seems like on the outside, people question the training staff in just terms of just their injuries and just how to treat that. What do you say about them? What they've done to you? Should come help you?
Yeah. I mean, everybody has their opinions, but nobody is here, and nobody is having the conversations we're having. Nobody's, doing what we're doing right now and building and working to make sure I get where I need to be. And they've done a really good job of showing up. They've done a really good job of making sure that I'm in a good place mentally and just making sure that I feel comfortable. And, it's been an up and down season when it comes to that stuff. And that's just part of the process. And but we're in a good place right now. And like I said before, we're just going to continue to keep building on that.
What are your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, so it's, obviously not the season we had hoped for. Injuries was certainly a part of it, but I think that, the other part, it should always start with self-reflection also. And that'll be these next, the beginning of the summer study where, you can, as the head coach, you can take the easy way out and say injuries, but the bottom line is we could have played better too. It's not like we knocked it out of the park every night. So the study, from all of it, how we played offensively, how we played defensively. This is a time where you can go slower. You can watch more. The assistants will all have projects to do. And I mean, to me, that's how you do. If you look at I'll give you an example, is Bud. So when he was in Atlanta, and he does the same thing in Milwaukee, he's one of the guys I always watch them play in training camp. And you can always see he's always got one or two big things that he's changed. A couple of years ago, it was their help defense, and it's study. Because you can get, you should get better if you'll spend the time in the summer to just sit, watch, and figure stuff out. Yes, yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of other guys too. I just, like for me with him, being in the same, division when they were there. It hit me right away, like the first year, like, what? Well, Spo's always done that. Miami's always kind of been ahead of the curve with, they play zone more than most of us. They used to blitz more than a lot of us. And so there are a lot of things like that certainly we have to look at.
Steve, what you walked into, what you thought you were going to have, and maybe you ended up having this a little different with the Miles Bridges situation. How did it not have anything at all this season? Because what happened impact this team?
Yeah, I don't even know how to, if you can really, how you can really gauge that. Obviously he was the high scorer. He was the best rebounder. So it's definitely has an impact. I would say. Then you look at the other thing. So it gave PJ a chance to be an every night starter, I think, which was a positive thing for him, and a good chance also for us to evaluate him playing against starters every night in that position. Other guys got more time too. And, as you guys know, listen, basketball is a game where, it starts at the top of your roster. So when you lose a guy who's top 2, top 3 player, it's a big deal. It's hard to, it's harder to win. Now, my thing is, and this is also one of the things I want to study. One of the things that Steve Kerr and his staff did when Steph and Clay and those guys were out were they stayed with how they played. And if you watch them now, all those guys, Looney and all these younger guys that played that year and year plus when they were not winning at all, but you see them now when they're playing with those guys, their execution is super high. And, they added some things too, but I think watching him, you could see this year when they all got back together, their execution was super high, even sometimes when all 3 of those guys weren't on the floor. So hopefully there'll be some of that with, the bigger roles that some of the other guys had too.
And then a second, with the potential salary team, how does that impact you guys at all, if at all, as a coaching staff?
Yeah, for me, you know what? You guys know this because as you got, we're the same, right? As you go on in your career, if this was 8 years ago and I'd been a head coach 1 year, it's different than where I'm at now. I will say, the one thing this year, even though it was tough and, I loved being the head coach again. I didn't even realize how much I missed it. And I enjoyed the year in Brooklyn and all that. But, I like having a team. I like being in charge of it. I like trying to figure out how you can have positive days. So obviously, I hope nothing happens because I want to coach again next year. But I've also been around this league long enough to know that don't ever be surprised by anything that happens. You guys know that. That's pro sports. So, I'm going to start studying, trying to figure out what things we can do to improve. The summer's about improvement everywhere. We're going to have good opportunity for external improvement. Hopefully we get lucky, with the draft and what pick we get. And then what we do control as a coaching staff is our internal improvement. And that's not just skill development. That's the misconception. It's not just guys shooting better, handling the ball better, coming up with a new move. That's a big part of it too. But it's also how you play, the team part of it. And that's the study part. So that's what I'll be concentrating on.
In terms of the degree of difficulty in implementing your defensive structure, it seemed like after the All-Star break is when you guys really started to kind of amp up that intensity, but then players started getting injured and the lineup started changing. How would you rate the degree of difficulty of having to kind of almost re-implement that with the numbers once they're back full again during the offseason?
Yeah, well, I will think that one thing going into next year with the majority of the guys, the continuity part is always important. So, we were before and we are now. We're more aggressive with our half court coverages than most teams are. We double team a lot more. I just think the way the game has changed, you can't sit back in a hole and watch. The Tatums, the Durants, the Doncic's, you can't just let them play, so that's how we're going to play. I think you can do it without opening up the court, which actually our guys have a good feel for and did a good job with. So we had a number of games where we were both able to, I would say, at least keep primary scores somewhat off balance and not open up the basket. And now, with that being said, a lot of that is Mark Williams, Nick Richards. When we were really good defensively, and we had stretch of I believe we're 9-8 the first 17 games, right after the All-Star break. And in that stretch, we're like second or third in defense. And a big part of it is just those two guys. They're big. Mark is very smart. Nick is physical. They anchor the basket. You can change coverages with them on the floor because they can really move. And, that was part. The other part was our perimeter defense, just guarding the ball, got a lot better as the season went on. And we were bad at it early in the year. And again, the way people are playing now, if you can't guard your guy a little bit, you better be like 25 a night, because, you're going to watch now in these playoff series. You guys know this, if you can't be a regular season team, you know what I mean? This league's all about winning in the playoffs, right? And guys that can't guard their man now, we're 5 out, 4 out, 1 in, it crushes you. It doesn't matter how smart they are. So if you're not going to be able to guard your guy, like, you better be terrific offensively.
Knowing the organization, speaking of Mark and Nick, how much comfort does it bring to you that absent getting a veteran big in here, that position is somewhat solidified with those two guys both under deals and both playing the way that they did at the season?
Yeah, well, what I've told them both is it's an opportunity. I do think you have to be also, and this is where the study comes in, you have to be careful about, these last 20 games of the season. There are more organizations over the years that make mistakes because, you get guys that play well, and they're not meaningless games for the players, but they're not the same as playing as if you're playing to try to get in. Our first year in Orlando, to give you an example, I don't know what the record was, but I think we had the first or second best record like the last 35 games of the year. And so not only did we make the playoffs, but we learned, I remember Jeff Waltman said, this is how you learn about your team, because every night was life or death. We had to get in, and we played our way in. And not only did we learn about some of the younger players, but we learned about the veteran players who hadn't played in those type of games. We didn't play in those type of games. So I do think you have to temper everything. And again, take your time and look at it. We have one thing that stinks about not playing in the playoffs. It's a long off season. Just having that one, if you just play in the first round, it's another 2.5 weeks and those are the games you learn from. And, they are more taxing, and it changes the off season for everybody. So, but, all of that goes into the planning too.
You're talking about top end of the roster, so you have a 1 in 8 chance roughly of getting number 1 pick. How significant would that be if and when you are?
Oh, I mean, potentially, I've never, whatever. I've never seen those guys play, whoever we would pick, whatever. But no, I mean, from what I understand is the top of the draft this year is obviously potentially game changing, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, whatever. At the very least, what I would think, and again, I haven't had time to, I'll start watching those guys a little bit too, but at the very least, I would think that those guys at the top would provide either start or provide good depth right away, immediately. And, so that's, the other thing I do, and you hit me because I wrote this down yesterday. The depth part to be a good regular season team has changed a little bit, in my opinion, because guys don't play 82 games anymore. And the more I'm watching how we're doing things, it's always been important, like, for instance, to have a third string guy that can play if a guy goes down, to have a backup guy that's good enough to play against stars. I actually think it's even more so now because guys don't play as many games. So you are having to play your backups against starters more nights, or your third string guys against second string guys. And that's one thing that I have liked about watching, some of our, like JT Thor, for instance, he's been really hurting. So he hasn't been able to participate in the practices at all the last week and a half. I think a lot of guys wouldn't have played. He played yesterday. I wouldn't say he was limping, but he was hurting. He never asked to come out, and then he hits a big shot, and he plays well. you know, I don't think he's not going to be a rotisserie guy, right? He's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be 19 a night or this and that. But you're going to win. You have to have guys like him, you know, and I think he's going to bring intangibles. But the fact that 20 years old, he did that and never was there a question about whether or not he was going to play, where a lot of guys in this league wouldn't do that anymore. So I think those are some of the things that you can learn too. And he was the one I was, thinking of, because even at 20, he has the size, plus he's smart. We execute when he's on the floor. You could play him against good players, and I think he's going to be fine, especially after another summer of lifting and growth like that.
What is the next level for this team? What's the next step? Get to, get to, and what is the playoff? Like, the situation, like, obviously, you guys are last, I think, in terms of playoff run right now, 7 years. How do you break that?
Well, you got to have a great off season, you know, and I think that, again, you will have, every team will have a chance for internal development, which is, you know, individual skill work like that. We'll have summer league. And then it's the study part, you know, what can we add, what we can change about how we play to make it better for the players too. And then we also have, you know, really good opportunity for the external development, you know, the draft, whatever comes with the draft. You know, we have 5 draft picks, or whatever else pops up, trades, free agency, whatever. So I think that's what it is. And obviously the goal has to be, you know, to make the playoffs. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. I mean, which gets back to the same thing though, is to make the playoffs and be able to play well, you got to be good at both offense and defense. You have to be able to play. You know, I try to think, I told them that last week because they get sick of me saying it to them, but they'll tell you my number one message from day one, because it's just fact, is this: you have to have a team game, which gives you a chance to win every night in this league. And if you don't want to defend and just try to outscore everybody, you might be good enough to win some games you're going to get at the end of the year. And these games we're going to start watching tomorrow night, you're not going to be there. You have no shot. You have to build a game from day one where you defend and you play offense well. And that just gives you a chance. And I would say if you're top 10 in one and top 15 in another, that's where most of the good teams are. You know, we lost last time we played in the playoffs here. We lost the 7-game series to Miami. And I believe we were 9th and 9th or 9th and 10th. You know, 1 in offense, 1. I think we're 9th in offense, 10th in defense, or something like that. And, you know, they were like 8th and 9th. You know, I mean, that's what you have to get to. But you have to have a game where guys can play at both ends of the floor. And look at, if you want to look at deeper into the playoffs, rarely does a team win that's, you know, not top 10 in both or very close, you know.
Because of all the injuries, how much did that force you to play guys out of their normal goal this season? And because of that, what are the benefits and the detriments to evaluating this offseason, because guys were in such different goal with all the injured guys you have to see?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that's the whole challenge for sure. Yeah, you have to be, okay, so even I would say this, watching this, you know, with all the younger guys here playing together, right, is some of the problem areas like the turnovers, for instance. And I want to say this the right way. I mean, part of the problem was they're playing with each other. You know, they weren't out there with Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, Melo. You know what I mean? Where they're being asked to do a lot more than they normally would in an NBA game. So we're playing a team like Toronto. Those are huge games for them. And they're playing against Van Vliet and Barnes and Siakam. And they're just, you're forced to ask them to do things that they're not ready to do at this stage of their career. So it doesn't mean that they don't have potential, or they can't be good players. And I think that's a big part of this. You know, it's just like you could go the other way. If you go back through the last, say, 20 years, the guys that played with LeBron, right? They play great. Somebody gives them a big contract, and all of a sudden they get there and they say, damn, this guy's not as good as he looked when he was with LeBron. Shh, Amazing how that works, the guys that played with Steve Nash, yeah, they're open all the time. Stoudemire rolled, you had to do something, they're open, they make the shot. They get traded and all of a sudden they're like, Jesus, this guy lost a step here, So I think it works both ways.
What was your challenge to the team? And what did you tell them after, I guess, after the season was over? What do you want to do this offseason with them individually to make sure they're better?
Yeah, so I told them, the guys meet, I'm sure you guys know, the guys meet with Mitch and Buzz today and talk about the season, all that. And I don't do that. I never have. I need time. I want to be able to sit down with them and say, map out your summer. These are the priorities. This is what I think you should be doing. This is what I see. I'll take some of them to lunch, some to dinner, some would sit in my office, and like that. So it's just not bang, bang, bang. So I can, I have some time to think about that. Right. The one message I gave them yesterday was this: is from my experiences, your season next year is all set up by your summer. Most of the time when guys have breakout years, I don't care how old you are, have breakout years, is because they have a breakout summer. That they spend an extra 20 minutes a day in the weight room, they do this. And I mean all of it. Sometimes it's diet for these guys. Sometimes the young guys have to change the way they live, whatever it is, but it's set up. And the other one, and and the older guys were shaking their head. It's not just the younger guys. Everybody, I'm not going to tell you about one of my favorite managers the other day. They were getting on him about not bringing up younger players after, and he said, one of the things that fans they always like the guys that are in AAA because they haven't disappointed them as much yet. So we have veteran players here who are hitting 270 and they're good players. And I know they're not that those guys aren't going to be good, but that is the way it happens. And if you want to look even here, Al Jefferson had his best year here. Marvin Williams had his best years here. Batum had his best years here. Kemba, obviously. Jeremy Lamb had his best years here. Those guys weren't 21, 22. But what they did in all of those situations is they had great summers, okay, where they were here most of the time. They worked, they got in great shape. Al was third team All-NBA that one year here, but he killed himself. He had a great, great summer. And that's the way it works, no matter how old you are, not just the younger guys, the older guys also.
Steve, something that just happens time and time again in the NBA is, if the star player isn't winning, he wants to go somewhere else for a game. How important is it?
Well, first, I'm gonna add to that. First, they fire the head coach, then he does it. Yeah, no, yeah. If we really want to be factual about how the NBA works, yeah, no. First, they one or two head coaches, then they leave. Yeah, okay. Anyway, I just want to make sure. Yeah.
But how important is it? LaMelo's been here 3 years, and he's a cornerstone piece. How important is it to put guys around him and to
Critical? Absolutely, because as upbeat and everything as he is, and he is fun to be around. He's been a joy to coach so far. But Mike can speak to this, Brian, because they see him in that locker room. He handles losing. It's harder for him than almost any of them. We have a couple guys that losing really bothers, but we've had a couple nights where, and there's three guys in there that do this where, I'll get the 12:30 text like, my bad, I'm sorry, I should have done better. And he's done that a couple of times. He badly wants to win. I think he loves it here. I think he loves the city. I think he loves the organization. I think he really enjoys his teammates, but for sure. And also when you're at his level, there are certain expectations, he's going to be compared to the other point guards, and I don't have to list them, that are his age, that have had not incredible playoff success, but they've had some. So I think it's important for his career also.
And just to follow up on it, can you give us a medical update on when is he going to start to run? Is he going to be able to start to play basketball? Is he going to be ready for training?
Oh, I think the training camp part, I'd feel that he should be by training camp, actually like 100%. I think so far everything's gone well. He's diligent with his treatments. He's been good. He went on our last 2 trips, so he could be around the team more. But I think he's actually ahead. And Joe and these guys are great. They're all over this. So I think that all of it so far is very positive.
Follow up on that, what are some of the medical updates for the guys? How many of these injuries are nagging, like prevent Cody, we really didn't see? What's kind of the timetable attendance of the other guys getting themselves back to full go?
Yeah, I think the majority of them, the other guys, Terry, Gordon, Kelly, those guys are not far away. Mello, obviously, PJ not far away. Cody's still, kind of up in the air a little bit, which is obviously he's a big piece too. He brings a lot to a team. And that's the one, if there's a positive about having a long off season, we have time to do it. And again, Joe is so thorough and on top of these guys that when you're around them, it makes you feel confident that those guys will get there.
You were a fan and saw a 27-win team this year. What signs of hope would you have for next year that they can make a change?
Yeah, well, I would hope that they would, as a fan, that they would, and I'm a coach, so I look at it differently. We did play a lot better as the year went on. We made good progress that way. I thought the guys showed good character, and this has nothing to do with coaching. Nothing. Being on a team is just like, you guys work with other people, right? Your culture is who you work with. It's not the guy that's in charge. It's a big Belichick thing is, your culture isn't how I coach them. It's who we have. And that part, I thought our guys did a great job. We could have stopped playing. They never did. We practiced well all year. Actually, our practices got better and better. Our shoot arounds got better and better. And that says a lot about those guys, and who they are. And then the one thing I would say is that, especially if we have everybody back again, we have a lot of pieces. There's not a lot of guys like Mello out there, and he only got to play 35, 36 games. But, he too, and I will say this, he took a big step defensively. His defense was much, much better at the time that he got hurt. So have a guy like him. I thought Gordon, was terrific the last few games that he played. And Gordon really played well with the game on the line. Terry had a good year. Terry's numbers are very misleading because his numbers when he got to play with both Mello and Gordon were, if you want to look at his 3-point shooting and his 2-point efficiency, were really good. He just had to play so many games where, he's the primary scorer. He's guarding the other team's best player, and they're double teaming him every time, and we needed him to score. So, that hurts what his numbers would look like. But he had a very good year. So there's pieces here, and then again, I'll also say this. I tell the players this all the time. Our responsibility is to give the fans confidence that we can win. That's what the NBA is all about. So that when we start next year, hopefully we're healthy, we're playing well at both ends of the floor. Because I do know this, if we win here, the fans are a huge plus, huge.